This is CBN Newswatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Heather Sells. We begin with an update on the federal civil trial underway in San Francisco involving undercover investigators and Planned Parenthood. It could be the biggest pro-life case in decades. And now the Daily Wire reports that the judge ordered the jury to rule a certain way before the panel left to consider a verdict. Mark Martin joins us now to explain. Mark.
Heather, the country's largest abortion provider, Planned Parenthood, is suing investigators over undercover videos which allegedly show the discussion of the sale of aborted baby body parts. The Daily Wire reports Judge William Orrick ordered the jury to find investigators, including David Daleiden, guilty of trespassing at Planned Parenthood conferences and clinics. This was before the jury left to deliberate. Now, according to the Daily Wire, Daleiden already tried to have Orrick removed from the case, claiming he was biased against the defendants, but he lost that attempt. The Daily Wire also reports that Orrick told the jury, "I have already determined that these defendants trespassed at each of these locations. Because I determined that these defendants trespassed, the law assumes that Planned Parenthood has been harmed and is entitled to an award of nominal damages such as $1 for each trespass." The news outlet goes on to say that Planned Parenthood originally wanted $20 million in damages for trespassing, fraud, and RICO conspiracy against Daleiden and his colleagues, but Orrick limited potential damages to $600,000. The American Center for Law and Justice is a part of the defense legal team. Executive Director Jordan Sekulow told CBN News earlier that this trial is also about free speech and protecting those who speak out on behalf of the unborn.
We also have to fight for pro-life speech. And this is one of those issues where you are fighting for just pro-life speech, for the ability to get out good investigative journalism, which is done all the time without issue, unless, of course, it's the abortion industry who you are trying to investigate, and suddenly the courts start treating them differently.
So once again, the jury has retired to deliberate a verdict. Heather, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. And breaking news out of California today. One person is dead and several are injured following a shooting at Saugus High School in Santa Clarita. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office says that authorities have taken a 15-year-old suspect into custody and that the suspect is being treated at the hospital. Officials say at least 5 victims have also been transported to the hospital and are being treated for their injuries. 2 of them are reported to be in critical condition right now. Officials are currently working to reunite parents with students who have been escorted out of the school, and we will be continuing to follow this story online at our website. Go to cbnnews.com for the latest. Well, the House impeachment inquiry hearings into President Trump resumes tomorrow. The Associated Press now reports that a second U.S. embassy staffer in Kiev overheard another key call. The July 22nd call between Trump and his European Union ambassador Gordon Sondland was first mentioned in the Wednesday hearing by William B. Taylor, Jr., the acting U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says it's more testimony that points to wrongdoing by Trump.
The devastating testimony corroborated evidence of bribery uncovered in the inquiry, and that the president abused power and violated his oath by threatening to withhold military aid and a White House meeting in exchange for an investigation into his political rival.
Meanwhile, President Trump tweeted the impeachment path is going nowhere, saying the average American can't identify anything that the House Democrats have done since she's become Speaker other than chase Donald Trump. This impeachment hoax is such a bad precedent and so bad for our country. And we'll have more on this story and others this evening on Faith Nation. You can watch it right here on the CBN News Channel. Well, turning to the weather, the brutal cold wave is finally expected to ease in many places today. It is moving east after breaking records across much of the country, from Alabama to Ohio to Vermont, with temperatures falling as low as 11 degrees in St. Louis. The storm front also brought 30 inches of snow near Traverse City, Michigan, and it hit farmers hard in Wisconsin, and down south in parts of Texas. Temperatures fell so fast, 50 degrees in 24 hours, that they froze the water coming from the sprinklers. Now the cold weather is heading east, where it could break still more records. In Israel, less than 1 hour after an announced ceasefire, the terrorist group Islamic Jihad launched more rockets from Gaza towards southern Israel. The terrorist group has fired off about 450 rockets in the past 2 days, some going as far as Tel Aviv. The Iron Dome defense system has kept most of them from striking populated areas. This round of violence started after Israel assassinated a senior Islamic Jihad leader in Gaza in a targeted strike. More than 30 Palestinians, many of the militants, have been killed in Israeli strikes on terrorist positions in Gaza.
But these terrorists are not only out to kill Israelis, in fact, they're killing their own people in Gaza.
We made it very clear that we are not looking for escalation and that quiet will be answered with quiet.
It's unclear how long the so-called ceasefire will last. Well, Pope Francis touched on a hot topic today while speaking at the Vatican. Francis is demanding that Facebook, Apple, Google, and other tech companies urgently take measures against pornography. Francis told a conference of religious leaders and tech representatives that it's no longer acceptable to merely follow the law in monitoring online content because technology is outpacing regulation. He's urging the tech giants to remove child pornography from the web and to prevent children from accessing pornography online. Francis said the companies need to assume moral responsibility for the lasting emotional and sexual developmental impact that pornography has on young people. A recent poll found that 70% of American millennials and 64% of Generation Z say they will likely vote for a socialist candidate in the next election. That finding comes as no surprise to Venezuelan Daniel DiMartino. He's a U.S. spokesman for the Venti Venezuela political movement. And on this week's episode of The Global Lane, DiMartino says American young people can learn a few lessons from Venezuela's socialist nightmare.
So what do American young people need to know about socialism as it's being practiced today in Venezuela? What don't they get?
They need to get that all these free things have a huge cost, and their cost is our freedom. In Venezuela, the cost was through shortages and high inflation. In the United States, with the programs that many in the democratic socialists are proposing, might be, less freedom of speech. It might be lower wages, more unemployment, and even higher inflation, depending on how they pay for these programs.
And you were a part of a political movement that isn't even allowed in Venezuela. Is that correct?
That's right. We're not an authorized political party by the government. We're the only free market political party in the country, so it's really not surprising that they don't want us to exist.
So tell us what else. What else do we need to know about communism and socialism and the way it oppresses people?
Yeah, one important thing here is that, and I think the reason for these poll results, these astonishingly terrible poll results, is that education needs to change in this country. It is not acceptable that 1 in 10 millennials or 1 in 10 also Gen Zers, people who are even younger than millennials, think that Donald Trump has committed more human rights violations than Hitler or Stalin. That is not acceptable. That means schools are not teaching about the Holocaust and are not teaching about the starvation in the Soviet Union, right? So schools need to teach that better. Families need to teach better their children about freedom, about patriotism, about God. Communism is the religion of state-imposed atheism. You cannot be a communist and follow God's teachings.
Well, I know you're just finishing up college right now. So what has your experience been at your university that you're attending?
Yeah, my experience, it's been that there's very few people who are actual socialists, who know what it is, who want to abolish private property, who want to destroy, basically everything that the United States is based upon, the freedom that the U.S. is based upon. I think that most of the people who are supporting this word, that is simply a word, socialism, they think it's just free things. So what I've been able to do is just discuss policy by policy. What do they support? Why do you think this policy would be good or bad? And if you go into the details, a lot less people really are socialists. They're just against the current status quo. So they need to be provided an alternative so that they don't become socialist.
Well, do they realize, those that you talk to, that there's no such thing as free stuff? That basically somebody has to pay I'm thinking of some of the candidates who were saying, hey, free college tuition, this, that, or the other thing free. Taxpayers have to foot that bill, don't they? And that means young people when they get into the workforce.
The huge problem there is that they think the rich can pay for it. And so they need to be told a very basic fact. There is not enough money among the top 1% to pay for free healthcare, free college, and free housing, on free everything like the Democrats are proposing. There's simply not enough money to tax away from the rich to pay for those programs. And even if you were to tax them 100%, then if you do, then you just destroy the U.S. economy. So we have to find alternative ways to reduce costs. We have to propose bold free market alternatives to reduce costs if we want to challenge the socialists in America.
Daniel, what has your experience been? Do any of them that you talk to know about what's happening in Venezuela and why?
Most of them do not, unfortunately. And in fact, in the Victims of Communism poll, they also talked about that. Only half of Americans know what's going on in Venezuela. That's very low. And I think that if we spread the news of the reasons I had to flee my country, which were that the government took over the means of production, just like Karl Marx supports, just like socialists support. They gave free healthcare, free housing, free food, all of the things that the Democrats want to give here, or the most radical Democrats. I think that if more young Americans knew about what was going on in Venezuela and the policies that were implemented, they would be less likely to be socialist.
Well, education is the way to reverse the trend. Daniel, we appreciate you taking the time. Daniel DiMartino of Mente, Venezuela. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And you can hear more from DiMartino and get Gary Lane's commentary about European Union actions against Israel on the Global Lane. That is tonight at 9:30 Eastern and only on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, what one expert says about Turkey's role in the genocide of Christians in Nigeria. But before we go to break, here's a look at what is trending right now on CBNNews.com.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN Newswatch.
Thanks for joining us.
Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN Newswatch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Yes, right on time.
From Superbook.
Pepper's Pizza Palace is donating pizza for everyone today. Wait. I have big plans today.
Trust in God even when times are tough. He has a plan for your life.
Hey, we're gonna be late for the grand opening. My parents want me to help with this outreach thing, feeding the community. What am I supposed to do here? Superbook!
Join the Superbook Club and get Superbook The Birth of Moses, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25.
Pharaoh ordered all newborn Hebrew boys thrown into the Nile River, and I have a 3-month-old brother.
The Birth of Moses, yours for a gift of only $25.
What will you do the next time the soldiers come? I do not know, but I trust God has a plan for all of us.
Superbook Club members, free streaming for seasons 1, 2, and 3 is now available.
An Egyptian television news program says that Turkey is clearly a terrorist state with a broad reach. It reports that Turkey is supplying weapons to the terrorist group Boko Haram in Nigeria. 10 TV host Nashat Al-Delhi reported on a leak confirming an intercepted phone call from a few years back confirming the action. He reported in part, today's leak confirms without a doubt that Erdogan, his state, his government, and his party are transferring weapons from Turkey to, this is a shock, to where you may ask, to Nigeria. And to whom? To the Boko Haram organization. Well, Raymond Ibrahim, a journalism fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center and an expert on the Middle East and Islam, joins us now with more on this. Welcome, Raymond.
Hello, Heather.
Are you surprised by this report? What's your take on it?
No, I'm not surprised. And my take on it is that the actual tape that was made that you referenced and you quoted was made apparently in 2014 or 15. And it was reported widely in certain areas in the U.S. and in the West, not so much, and not much came out of it. And the reason, I think, is because Erdogan wasn't so, didn't have his fingers so much in Islamist politics outside of his own nation. But now that we've seen, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the ISIS Islamic State caliph who was killed recently, and he was found just 3 miles from the Turkish border, which is in fact one of the last, or if not the last bastion of jihadi so-called freedom fighters of attacking the Syrian government. It's brought it up again, the fact that everyone is saying, well, look, he's supporting ISIS. So now we're remembering, and that was, I think, the point of the Egyptian show. We're bringing back to see that there's some continuity here. It's not just right next door to Syria, to Turkey, meaning Syria. He's involved with some of the absolute worst Islamic terror groups. Remember, Boko Haram, which its name loosely means Western education is forbidden, haram, was basically doing what ISIS is notorious for years before ISIS. So the whole, head chopping, crucifying, massacres, enslaving women and children, burning people alive, Boko Haram was doing that. And one of the things that international observers have been noticing, especially increasingly, is that their armaments, their weapons, are very sophisticated. And it's even spilled into the Fulani tribesmen in Nigeria and in other parts in Africa. For example, I'm sure you know, Burkina Faso, also in Western Africa, attacks on Christians have become horrific. Just in the last few months, there have been so many killed, and always in the context of checking out if they're wearing crosses, if they can say the Islamic Creed or not, and then being butchered and so forth. And those tribesmen, the Fulani, who are essentially living almost on a primitive scale, appear with very advanced weaponry.
Well, that's really interesting, which would kind of seem to perhaps give more weight to this idea that perhaps Turkey is collaborating with Boko Haram. What would the benefit be to Turkey of collaborating with Boko Haram?
Well, there's several theories. One is Erdogan basically is an ardent Islamist, and he is supporting and behind any Islamist movement in any country. He's the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. He was allied with Qatar of Al Jazeera as his ally. And so you can see him, he's trying to help develop these Islamist groups so they can overthrow more secular states. Though, in fact, in Nigeria, an aside that I think is important, the president himself, Muhammad Buhari, of Nigeria, who's Muslim, Nigeria is half Christian, half Muslim, has been accused himself of being behind the so-called genocide, which a lot of international groups have called what's happening to Christians in Nigeria, that he himself is complicit in this armament. So he could very well be an ally of Erdogan and so forth, and it's just some sort of Islamist overall coalition globally.
I want to ask you, the President Trump, of course, met with the President of Turkey yesterday. Do you think he's aware of these kind of ties to terrorism? And what are your thoughts on that meeting yesterday?
Well, in general, I think, what he's aware of is really hard to tell. But I think the meeting in general, Trump and presidents won't necessarily bring up all these things, obviously. So when he met, for example, in Saudi Arabia with the king and so forth, he doesn't really mention human rights abuses and so forth for whatever strategic tactical reasons. So it's really hard to predict, but I think he needs to be aware because Erdogan's he's got his fingerprints everywhere now. It's not just Syria, which is very obvious, but now there's older evidence of him involved in Nigeria and also in Turkey itself, the Christian population, the minority there. And remember, Turkey was originally entirely Christian. It was Anatolia. It was actually where St. Paul wrote all his epistles to. They're really being treated badly and discriminated against, and a lot of hate preaching in Turkey is increasingly against Christians and Jews. So definitely Turkey's going down the wrong path with Erdogan, though many Turks themselves remain committed to the Ataturk ideal of secularism.
Well, we are out of time, but Raymond Ibrahim, thank you for your time and your insights here.
Thanks for having me, Heather.
Up next, remembering the life of a missionary who was killed while trying to share the gospel. We'll talk with one of the leaders of his missions group when we come back.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
Nigerian Christians are
Christians in Iran are routinely arrested.
Happily, Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Watch Christian World News, Saturday at 5 p.m. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
This weekend marks the one-year anniversary of the death of missionary John Chow. You may remember that he was trying to reach people on the isolated island of North Sentinel between India and Southeast Asia. The North Sentinelese are known for a complete lack of contact with the outside world, and authorities in the region believe that the islanders shot and killed Chow when he tried to approach them with the help of local fishermen. Well, Chow was a missionary with a sending organization known as All Nations, and one of its leaders, Dr. Pam Arlund, joins us now. Dr. Arlund, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Talk about John Chow on this one-year anniversary. What are some of the memories that you have of him? What would you like people to remember about him?
Yeah, we are so pleased to remember John Chow and the amazing love that he had for a people that he never met. And so 1 year after his death, we're asking ourselves, how can we best honor his death and honor his service and sacrifice? And we've decided that the best way is to continue to do what he did, which is to share the love of Jesus, hear about him.
I want to ask you, in light of his death and as you think about missionary safety, has All Nations revisited any of its security protocols? Are you rethinking any of the ways that you send missionaries out?
All Nations, like all missions agency, I think, are constantly addressing this issue. We do care about the safety of our missionaries, but we also have to balance that with the fact that there are 7,000 people groups who have never yet had the chance to hear that Jesus loves them. And so we're going to continue to go hard to those places where people haven't yet had a chance to hear about him.
I understand that some people have reached out to All Nations to say that Chow's life and death has encouraged and inspired them. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, All Nations has been so pleased to meet people all over the United States and all over the world who say that they were just so made available. The fact that John would willingly offer himself to Jesus in any way that Jesus would want to use him has just led so many to pray and so many to ask themselves, how can I help people find out about Jesus for the first time? It's been truly inspiring.
Well, that is good to hear. Dr. Pam Arlund with All Nations, thank you for your time. Coming up, the Country Music Association honored its female stars last night as the legendary artist Dolly Parton sang some gospel songs. We'll bring you a look right after this.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to CBN.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible,
yes,
Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link, Tuesday nights at 6:30.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Get Protect Your Sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
The Country Music Association honored and highlighted the women of country music at the CMA Awards last night. The show began with a dozen female performers singing a medley of major hits, and Dolly Parton sang some gospel songs, teaming up with the group for King and Country. And Parton also performed with Zach Williams and sang the song Faith as well. Well, that is it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. Remember that you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, please tell us what you think about the stories that you've seen by emailing us at newswatch@cbn.com or just talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope that you'll join us next time. Have a great day.